Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business.
Well, welcome everyone. This is the Speaker Launcher Teleclass series. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson, author of The Wealthy Speaker 2.0, and soon to come, the Epic Keynote. That's actually the reason why today's topic has come up. Presentation skills are certainly top of mind for me right now with that book underway and coming out in May. Today's topic is Be More Funny, Make More Money. Who doesn't want that, right? And our special guest expert is David Glickman. David is the chief writer for funnierspeeches.com, funnierspeeches.com, a humor writing service that puts funny words in your mouth. He has performed humor punch-ups for over 100 professional speakers and executives. In addition to his humor writing, David is also a professional speaker and comedian, having performed over 2,000 programs since 1985. So you can rest assured he is not just dealing in theory, he continues to put his funny where his mouth is. Thank you very much, David, for being here with us today. I so appreciate your time.
Oh, Jane, it's my pleasure. This hour is going to seem like 4 hours. That's how we're going to try to get in here today.
Well, that's great. Now, let's just dive right in. Some of our listeners have some pretty straight-laced topics. So do you think they should be working towards adding humor to their speech?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, they should be working on it more than someone who has a lighter topic. The reason being that when you talk about marketing speakers, if you have 4 or 5, 6 speakers who are perhaps, let's say, being pitched for a booking, they're all equal in their expertise. They're all fairly equal in their price point. The one who is the funniest will get the booking, no matter how serious the topic is. There's very, very, very few instances, Jane, where I've seen a topic that couldn't lend itself to some humor. Not, bust a gut every 10 seconds kind of humor, but some humor along the way.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think Jen had brought up an example of, a military guy who, just totally straight-laced, trying to come up with something humorous for him to open his presentation. And he said, I was feeling really crazy last night, so I drank some milk that was a couple of days past the expiry date. Just something to kind of lighten things up and know that everything doesn't have to be so serious, right?
Right. Humor, and just like the example you just gave, humor is typically a surprise, something you don't see coming, something that they're not expecting. Every topic has the ability to do some kind of surprise component, some kind of surprise element like that. I have helped speakers who are experts on tax law, who have done all day 8-hour programs on tax law. There's really nothing more boring than tax law. And I apologize if any of our listeners here are accountants, but you can be a funny accountant. You can be a funny accountant.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I do think that we do have a lot of people who speak to, very particular industries. So let's say you speak to the dental industry. How would we customize humor just for them? Or any specific audience?
Yeah. Well, no, that's a great question. What I always say is the actual research and development on any kind of program, that is really what's going to help you mine this humor. It's funny you bring up dental. I actually did a program for a dental group about a year or so ago, and I was digging through my notes here, thinking, well, what was funny about dental? Because I knew nothing about the dental industry, zero. Mm-hmm. And I use humor in different ways. Humor doesn't have to just be talking, Jane. It can be parlayed in many, many different ways. So for this particular group, I learned all the nuances, let's say, of dentistry. I'm not an expert, and nor would I profess to be. But for argument's sake, they were talking a lot about the modernization of the equipment of the saliva ejector, which I guess is the technical thing for that thing they stick in your mouth that, sucks all the fluids.
I can see where this is going.
Right. Well, I just made up I made a parody of a book cover, which was 50 Shades of Gross, cleaning the saliva ejector. And with the dentist, they love that. It was something topical, 50 Shades of Gray, but we just changed it to 50 Shades of Gross, put in something about them, held that up, and boom, that's humor to them. What else in dentistry? I always look, what are the acronyms maybe within a field? Again, just going back to your dentistry question, in this particular dental group, they had a philosophy in treatment that they called WIDIOM. It was an acronym, WIDIOM, WIDIOM. Would I do it on me? Meaning, is this the kind of treatment I would do on myself? And that was the philosophy they practiced by. So I just step back for a minute, and listeners, think about this. Step back for a minute. Think of that phrase, would I do it on me? That could have a double meaning. It's serious for them, but sometimes all you have to do is say thing. You repeat their thing and just let it sit there. So I repeated it back, and then all I said was, that's a great question to ask. I Googled it, and there is a website, wouldidoitme.com, but it has nothing to do with dentistry. Boom, got a huge laugh, never addressed it again. So, you know what, I call it, look on the periphery of a topic. Because some of your listeners, Jane, have very serious topics that they're probably saying, well, that's fine for dentistry, but I speak on diversity. There's nothing funny in diversity. Or I speak in hospice. There's nothing funny in hospice. And I beg to differ. You go on the periphery. You don't make fun of a dying person if you're speaking in hospice, but you make fun of some of the nuances. I'll give you an example here. My business partner in the business Funnier Speeches is Ron Culberson, who spent many years working in hospice before becoming a professional speaker. And when he comes out, his opening line is, before I start, let me just tell you, I do not have a DNR, which means do not resuscitate. I do not have a DNR. So if something were to happen to me during my program, do something. Don't just make me comfortable. And, to their group, that's very funny. You're not making fun of death. You're talking about something in their world. Right. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that we brought up Ron and what it is that you guys do. Just before we go on, tell people how you deliver your humor through the music and things that you do in your programs, just so they kind of get it. Sure. My particular program, when I'm keynoting, I try to do different touch points of different ways because I feel that adult learners have different things that connect with them. So some of my program is me just speaking. Some of my program is music, which you were just alluding to. I actually play a musical keyboard, but what I've done is I've taken a portable keyboard that you might buy for $100 in Walmart or some kind of store, and I put little strap things on the end of them and put it on a strap like you would wear a guitar. So I'm wearing the keyboard. And what I do is I just play song parodies. I'll find stuff within that particular industry or topic or expertise, and I'll write very, very short, and that's the key here, short song parodies, less than a minute long. And that's another way to present humor. And if we had several hours today, I could do 2 hours just on teaching that. But I also do funny book covers, like I alluded to the 50 Shades of Gross. You can find popular books. You can. So adults learn many, many different ways. I do audience participation. I'll pull people up and get humor that way through improvisation. So there's no one right way to get humor. There's many, many different ideas of the way that you can make that work.
I've seen a lot of people gloss over the humor and not let it land. Can you just talk to pausing a little bit and timing? How do you develop that?
I'm pausing right now. I did that for
I should have known.
Yeah, to make you nervous.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
that.
Did
he drop off the call?
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, no, the pause is really important. Well, you know what's funny, though? There's two ways that I do as a humorist to what we call milk a line or milk a laugh. One is after the laugh lands or hits, which means the audience laughs. You could almost look at it as a graph. The laugh goes up, and it peaks, and then it starts to go down. You should pause, in most cases, at least till the laugh gets just about up to the top, but start talking again before the peak has dropped. I mean, you can let it go over the top a little bit, but don't let it drop all the way down. I mean, and there are, and again, for your listeners, this is just my opinion. There are other humorists who would say, no, let the pause go for 40 seconds. Take it, if you have a cup of water on stage, pick it up and let it sit. I don't do that. I believe in a very high LPM, which is laughs per minute. And that's what works for me. But the other thing, there's another technique that I use, which is if I get a big laugh on something, I will keep talking, but the words that follow the laugh are nonsensical or non-important. They are not integral to what I'm saying. I don't care that nobody can hear or understand what I'm saying. It's to make it look as though the laugh didn't throw me, that the rhythm is continuing. It's a weird technique, but it really is powerful. You just keep talking. But what you're saying is not important. You're just making up words, and like I'm doing right now, what I'm saying is not important. But you just talk rapidly after the laugh, and then by the time the laugh dies down, you hear it, and then you engage again into the words that are important that they need to hear.
Do you have an example, and sorry to put you on the spot here, but you gave me something that was really great for the book about you get the laugh, and then you have kind of a secondary laugh that you're going to tack onto it. Like when it's coming down, then boom, you have kind of a second piece. It's not necessarily a throwaway. Do you remember what you provided me with? Sorry, I'm putting you totally on the spot here.
Oh, no, that's okay. I don't remember the example because there's thousands. But I can give you another example here.
Okay.
Because I had pulled out, knowing we would have the call today, I pulled out some examples of, again, topics that are traditionally not known for humor and ways that I've been able to make them funny. So, again, we had talked about tax law before. Here's something I wrote for tax law, and this particular speaker. And can I back up for a minute, Jane, because I need to put some context for the listeners.
Okay.
What I always suggest is that the speaker writes his or her speech first without the pressure of putting humor in there, and then goes back and looks at what they've written, and then adds the humor, tries to create the humor, tries to find the places where humor might work. I believe we put too much pressure on ourselves if we think, I have to write funny first. Don't write funny first. Just write what you know. Write your expertise. Write your story. Write your content. Then go back and worry about making it funny. You'll get stuck if you try to write funny first. So the reason I bring that up is because the speaker I was working with here gave me the material with nothing funny in it, but he wrote his expertise, which was tax law. So now what I'm doing is going back and looking at this and seeing where are the humor opportunities. So he's talking about a new bill here in the U.S. It was called the Farm Bill, and the formal name of it was the Heartland Harvest, Habitat, and Horticulture Act of 2008, called the Farm Bill. And I said, well, I know they call it the Farm Bill, but I think they should call it the 4-H Bill. Think about it, Heartland, Harvest, Habitat, and Horticulture, 4 H's. Of course, if I was writing the farm bill, my 4 H's would be horses, hogs, hay, and heifers. It's a whole lot simpler. Boom. So you're going with, stuff that sounds funny to the ear. You're going with alliteration. But here in the U.S., and I don't know if it's true in Canada, we have a big group called 4-H.
Oh, yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So
I was laughing hysterically on the inside.
Okay. Because there was a secondary. The first laugh was that they called the farm bill and not the 4-H bill because there were 4 H's. It was like, duh, it's right there. And then I just tagged it with the horses, hogs, hay, and heifers.
Right, nice.
Horses, hogs, hay, and heifers is not really that funny. There's nothing that hilarious about it, but it's the quick, short syllables that make it pleasing to the ear and funny to the ear when you're doing the thing. It's wordplay, and that helps a lot.
And one of the things that you would do is look at each one of those 4 and say, now, could I make that funnier? Can I do better than that? Maybe you might lean into absurd or something like that with your H's, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, there was another one I did for this particular speaker where he had a slide. And by the way, that's another, I alluded to that with, the funny slides I do, which are just graphics, just artwork of books. But your regular PowerPoint slides with copy on them, there's room for humor there too. Here's how I try to explain it. If you ever watch a professional football game on television, there's usually someone doing play-by-play, and there's someone doing commentary or color. What the humor is the color. The play-by-play is the material. Your content, your expertise, that is getting your message out. You step back to comment on what you just said in a humorous way. Nice. For example, this gentleman had a slide about mortgages. So there was a big word mortgage on his PowerPoint slide. And the words I gave him were, well, look at this slide. I know the question you all have. Why is there a T in mortgage? Now, again, you have to see it visually because there is, T doesn't really, it's one of those weird spelled words. But that gets a big laugh because everyone's thinking, I never thought about that. I never thought about that. He's right. Why is there a T in mortgage? And then you go back and, no, seriously, or no, I'm kidding, or no, truly what I'm trying to say here is, so when you do one of these off-the-cuff, like you said, absurd, perhaps, remarks, then you have to bring it back home, bring it back on topic, and say, well, no, really, what are we all thinking when we see this? We're thinking, and then you're back into your content.
Right. So if people feel, let's say, uncomfortable with that particular technique, they feel like, oh, I don't have a funny bone in my body, I can't deliver on anything, they're humerically challenged, so to speak. What are some other options for them? You brought up slides and things like that. What about, what would be some other choices?
Right. First of all, I want to congratulate you on inventing the word humerically. That's not a real word, and it is now. Thanks to this call, the word humerically will now live on forever. But yes, if someone is humerically challenged, in my opinion, there's 3 components to being funny on stage. Having good material, being able to deliver good material, and being able to ad-lib and improvise. So you need at least 1, if not 2, but you don't need all 3 necessarily. So the good thing is, if you are humerically challenged, you can outsource the good material. In the same way, I have a great website that I love, but I outsourced it. I can't do coding or anything like that, so I get other people to do it. If people feel that they are not funny at all, they can get other people to write the material for them. Not to do their expertise, but to make something funnier. And again, I'm not doing this to promote me. There's plenty of people out there who can do what Ron Culberson and I do, to make
And it's called Humor Punch-Up Work, and you guys are two of the best. So we'll tell everybody who's curious at the end of the call how they can go about getting in touch with you for that.
But my point is that just because you're not funny doesn't mean you can't be funny by getting someone to help you with it. They can help you write it, and they can help you learn how to deliver the material. Because just because you have funny words, you still have to be able to get them out of your mouth in a way that hits the punch word or punch line. But the third component, which is being able to improvise and ad-lib, that can be developed as a skill that can be developed by taking improv classes, improvisational classes. Most big cities have some kind of classes, either through an independent group or a college group or their local performing arts center has improv classes, and there's plenty of adults who take that. You may never want to perform in an improv group, but it sure as heck teaches you how to think quickly on your feet so that when you are on stage, even if you're not that funny with writing material or delivering material, if you're great at ad-libbing, you don't need the other things. But most people, that's the hardest. Of the three I'm mentioning, Jane, that's the most difficult to be able to ad-lib.
Right, the most intimidating.
It is the most intimidating. So if you have written material that's tried, true, and tested, and you know it's going to work every time. I mean, I have some material that I wrote 20-some years ago that I'm still doing. It still works. I never have to worry about it. It's always going to work. And speakers will develop these kind of things that work all the time. Again, if you have to be willing to try it, though. You can't. I mean, most speakers are afraid to experiment with humor.
Right.
So can I tell you what the worst thing that happens is? You don't get a laugh. You're not going.
And what should you do when you don't get a laugh?
Well, there's two approaches, really. One is ignore it. I have a better approach, but the ignoring approach is a viable one. It's viable because the people in this audience are speakers. They're not billing themselves as a comic. If you're a comic in a comedy club on stage and you don't get a laugh, that's a problem. You're being paid to get laughs. If you're a professional speaker, the laughter is secondary unless you're billing yourself as a humorist. And I'm guessing most of the speakers on the call are not billing themselves first and foremost as a humorist.
Right.
Humor is secondary. So if you don't get a laugh, just keep going on. That is an option. But let me give you a better option.
Sure.
Another option, and again, the better option, I think, is to acknowledge it. You acknowledge it because audiences love vulnerability. Audiences love when they see someone not work, something not work. I saw a speaker once do the funniest line. I wish I had written this. Dave Dugan was his name. He and I did some convention together, and he did a line, and it didn't get a laugh. And he just looked up and he said, "I hear dead people." And the movie reference is kind of dated, but oh my gosh, I thought that was so funny.
That's good. And I've often said, that sounded funnier inside my head.
Exactly.
And that gets a laugh because, whatever I had just said. I don't try to be super funny. I just make fun of, I say that I'm not often a paid professional speaker. Typically I go out and speak to NSA, so I don't get paid for that. But there have been times on long car rides where my husband has offered me money to stop speaking. That gets a laugh, and it bonds me to the audience because of the male-female dynamic that most people can relate to being in the car. So that's the only humor really that I have in my presentation. I should really get you to go through and give me a few laugh lines. Let's circle back, David, to, I know there are some people who think, ooh, really, write out my whole speech? Let's talk about winging it versus writing it all out?
Let me, and before we do that, let me just mention again on those sticky situations where you do a line and it doesn't work. There's a term I use, Jane. I call it silence savers. Silence savers. And if your listeners want to just go and hang out in a comedy club on any given night, they'll probably hear 15 or 20 of them used that are kind of what we call stock lines that can be used almost anytime, anywhere. Like the one you just said, boy, that was funny in my head. There's so many that are out there. Things like, well, this is good. I was looking for a nice, quiet place to rehearse tonight. Or, wow, when you guys get quiet, you don't fool around. Or you pull out a pen or paper or talk into your iPhone and say something like, note to self, don't use the refrigerator reference again, or whatever it is. But again, not to take up too much time on the call, but just go into a comedy club and sit in the back. You'll hear all these silence saver lines over the course of a night or two and give you a lot to work with.
Yeah, and studying comedians, there's so much to that, right? Facial expressions, timing, movement. There's just, it's right there in front of us on the Comedy Channel almost 24/7. We can have a great education just from that, don't you think?
Oh, for sure. And I would say take it one step up from that. Seeing it two-dimensional on the screen certainly is 70% of the learning. But take it that extra 30% and go watch people live. Nice. There are certain things you'll never catch. And by the way, a lot of it's edited out on TV, so you're not missing how the comic recovered when he or she had a problem.
Nice. Good point.
But anyway, you were asking about writing out the speech. Yes. I write out every single thing I say, and I encourage others to do it. The least amount of words you can use for humor purposes is the best. You don't want to be lengthy. You don't want to be windy. I know as I give these answers here, I'm kind of lengthy and windy, but when I'm delivering humor, you try to use as few words as possible. And you won't know that until you see it in print. When Ron and I do punch-ups for folks, we ask them to have their speech transcribed. And sometimes we don't even have to help them at that point. Once they've seen a transcription of their own work, they go, wow, look what I'm doing here. And they're able to help themselves. You know what I'm saying? There's opportunities for humor you don't even know until you see the words, written out in front of you.
Nice. So that's a great way. If you're starting from scratch, this was a message on Facebook from Pat Katz. If you're starting from scratch, he said, where do we look first, second, and third when bumping up the humor in a brand new presentation? That's step number one, is to write it all out.
Write it all out. And like I said, what's really important is write it out without thinking you have to be funny. Take the pressure off yourselves. Let your mind be free. Use your expertise, and then go back on that second pass, third pass, what have you, and look for the opportunities. And some of the opportunities will end up being ad-libs that you never knew were going to happen, and that's why it's important to tape every program you do, because there might be something you said on stage and you'll never remember it again in a million years if you haven't captured it somehow. That's what's important. The other thing is, back to Patricia's question there, where do you look for this when you're first starting out? It also goes back to that research phase. Look in your topic of expertise and look. The internet is the greatest thing for humor writers. It's a godsend. It really is. Just look for Google. Let's say someone's topic is finance. We'll say finance.
Okay.
Google hot buttons in finance, things that are frustrating in finance, mishaps in finance, things like that. Now, I want to be crystal clear here. I am not saying take your humor from the Internet. That's A, that's a no-no, and B, if you're reading something funny on the Internet, chances are other people have read it too.
Right.
What I'm saying is use it for inspiration. Use it to say, oh, well, in finance, everybody's frustrated by the new law XYZ. Okay, well, if everybody's frustrated by XYZ, what is it about XYZ that we might be able to find a humorous thing? So let's just say XYZ is something that that takes a long time. Let's just say it takes a long time for XYZ to be implemented. Your speaker should look around where he or she is speaking. Let's say it's a hotel. Let's say the elevator in this hotel is just horribly slow. Really slow. And everybody knows it and go, something like, well, I'm glad you all made it down to the ballroom for this 8 a.m. keynote. Boy, those elevators are slow. Well, not as slow as the XYZ law, but they're slow.
Right. Nice.
See what I did there? You compared something, and boom, they love it because it's about something they know.
Right.
I have a little phrase, I think you've heard me say it before. The more specific the humor, the more terrific the humor.
Nice.
The more specific the humor, the more terrific the humor. I mean, I've made a whole career out of just customizing stuff. The cool thing is, it doesn't have to be as funny when it's about a specific industry or a specific topic. You were asking before, what if you speak to the dental industry or this or that? That's actually easier. It's easier to write to a, specific industry or topic than it is to general. It's easier to do what we do than it is to be Jerry Seinfeld and write for the masses. Much easier to do what we do.
Now, I wanted to let people know that they could hit 5-star on their phone if they want to ask a question. That'll trigger me. I'll be kind of monitoring my list up and down here to try to see if anybody's got their hand raised. But we did just get a question in from Dave Jennings. What are the 3 top recommendations on humor development books that you might have, David? Thanks, Dave, for that question.
That's a great question. You know what? Because I'm on a headset, I'm going to walk over to my bookshelf and see
it's probably
what
full.
my favorites are. Oh, it's hundreds.
Yeah.
Been collecting humor books for decades. But let's see, the best ones here. Well, this is an old book. And they've re-released it a few times. I mean, this is really old. But to me, I read this as a kid, and it gave me more insight into the way comedians think. And the way comedians think is the same way that speakers should think when doing humor. And it's actually by an NSA member named Larry Wilde, W-I-L-D-E, and it's called How the Great Comedy Writers Create Laughter. How the Great Comedy Writers Create Laughter. Now, I don't even know if it's still in print, but I'm sure Amazon would have some used copies of it.
Sure.
And the corollary to that, his first book was The Great Comedians Talk About Comedy. So any of those books, and I can tell you when they're from, I think, the 70s here. Yeah, they're from the 70s. But Larry Wilde's books, and I read them decades ago, but they were great. The other books, Judy Carter's book, The Comedy Bible, is just incredible. For someone who's trying to... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I wanted to call back to Judy Carter. Yeah. I believe that was one of her clients, was that high-ranking Army official that talked about the expired milk. I think that came from her, so I did want to give her credit for that. So, yeah, I've heard just fantastic things. Jen McDonough has been through her programs and just speaks very, very highly. So that's a good book as well.
Yeah, Judy's first book was called Stand-Up Comedy, the Book. And that's, I don't know if that's still in print or not, but certainly the Comedy Bible is in print, and both books
Comedy
are
Bible,
great.
okay.
So
good.
Those two questions. But I also read every comedian's biography or autobiography that I can.
Wow.
Because even though those aren't specifically about techniques we're talking about here, they're not, textbooks or how-to books, I learn more from those oftentimes than some of these other books. I've got hundreds of comic biographies here. One of the best ones in recent years was Steve Martin's. He wrote his, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. Let me go back to the bookshelf here. I think it's called Born Standing Up. Is that it? Let's see here. I must have loaned it out to somebody. But Steve Martin's autobiography. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's fantastic. So lots of good ideas kind of coming down the pike for people on how to start to develop this themselves. Anything that we can do to kind of sharpen our own humor writing skills? Is there anything outside of what we've already discussed?
Yeah, definitely. When you sit down to write humor, this is again after you've written a speech. I'm going to quote an author here. This was not about writing humor per se, but just writing. And maybe you talked about this on some of your other calls. I don't know. The book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Stephen Pressfield says, writing is not hard. Sitting down to write is hard. And it's the same with humor. Writing humor is not hard. Sitting down to write humor is hard. So once you've accepted the fact that you're going to have to work at this, here's how to improve it exponentially, and that is get a humor writing buddy. Get someone to work with you. They don't have to be a humorist or a comic. They just have to be someone who's as into it as you are, because this is a case of where 1 + 1 = 1,000. When Ron and I write together, we're going to create far, far more stuff than we would if we were writing individually. The creative process is one that works better in a collaborative setting. So that is why when you watch TV shows like 30 Rock, you see, people sitting around writing the humor for a television show, or even if you go back 40 years to the Dick Van Dyke Show, that's how writers write best, not in a vacuum, but collaboratively. So when it comes to humor, there's humor in numbers. Size does matter. Size definitely matters in humor. You want to write with other people if you can. And I write with other speakers in addition to Ron. They're my competitors, but it doesn't matter because we're helping each other. We're helping each other. I'll write a good line for you. You'll write a good line for me. And that's a great way to, like I say, increase your humor exponentially.
Nice. That's a great idea. I had never even considered having a buddy to help you before. I think that's quite brilliant. Thank you. Anything else?
Don't be afraid to try the material. That's what keeps a lot of people from moving forward with this stuff. Usually the first time you try a new line or piece of material or something that's supposed to get a laugh, the first time you deliver it with less than 100% confidence. And I'm guilty of this too. I've been doing this forever, and still I'll deliver the first time out, because you don't know if it's going to work or not, you deliver it with just a little bit less than 100% confidence, and an audience can smell fear the same way a horse smells fear. It's just, and that's okay. I have no advice on how to take away the apprehension the first time. I'm just saying, do it. Get it out there, because then the second time it's going to be a whole lot better.
Right.
So the first time, let's say you do it the first time and it doesn't get a laugh. If you truly believe that line has potential, or that bit or piece of material has potential, don't say, oh, that wasn't funny. Oh, God, why did I try that? I'm never going to do that again. No.
Mm-hmm.
Get it out of your system the first time. Do it the second time. Now, if the second time it doesn't get laughs, I always encourage people, do it one more time. If you truly believe it's funny, give it a third shot. Give it, it should work. If you knew it was funny and you tested it on, a few people in your inner circle and they thought it was funny, try it a third time. And then if the third time it doesn't get a laugh, put it in a file. Don't rip it up. Don't burn it. Put it in a file to be used again. I can't tell you how many times I've gone back to material that I wrote 20 years ago, and there was a line that just, I did it 3 times. It didn't work. I shelved it. But there was something about it, if I looked up, sometime I file my ideas by topic. So I'd go back to that topic, and I'd say, oh, well, yeah, I remember writing this line. It sucked. It didn't work. But I find a way to rewrite it now, these years later, either through I'm a better writer, or there's something about it that I can tweak it to make it funnier now. And more times than not, it works. If it was funny back then, it just maybe needed some time to sit on a shelf somewhere.
Needed some time to meld. So what do you think about, if anybody is kind of new to the business and they're going out and they're delivering some freebies, wouldn't freebies be a great time to test new material?
Oh, it's the best. It's the best because, again, no one's expecting it to be boom, 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 batting 1,000%. And again, as long as you're armed with some of those silence savers, again, a line doesn't work, you tap the mic. I'm sorry, is this thing working? Hello? Stupid things like that. The reason comics have been using them forever is because they work. So, yes, on the freebies, that is definitely the time to try some of these. But let me caution your listeners, Jane. Unless their goal is to be a humorist and build themselves as a humorist, don't try to put in too much humor. I try to compare it to an EKG, where you're seeing the heart beating, and then every little bit boop, goes up, and then a little bit more, and then boop, goes up. Think of the humor lines coming in. Maybe every 3 minutes there should be something funny. Unless you're into some very deep, powerful, poignant story, emotional story that you don't want the humor. You want to move your audience and pull them. Unless you're into something like that, I believe that you should have at least one funny line in there. When I say funny line, one moment of something that creates laughter at least every 3 minutes. In a 60-minute keynote, okay. There better be at least 20 times that the audience laughed, in my opinion. At least. Okay.
So I want to I want to open it up here for questions. So hit 5 star on your phone if you'd like to. We'll unmute you so that you can answer a question. And I would love to hear from you personally what your questions are. Paul McIntyre, I see your hand there, so I'll be back to you in 1 second. Let me go ahead. Paul, I'm going to unmute you. There you go. Okay, shoot. Question for David. Paul, are you there? I think I've got you unmuted at my end. There you are. Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Humor can often be edgy, and I know you should usually make fun of yourself, but give me an example where you might have tried to take one of those idiosyncrasies about the client and make fun about something unique to them, and you really blew it and actually insulted them, and how you recovered or how we should avoid doing that. Because like you said, it's easy to write about a specific audience. It's hard to write about a general audience. But can you remember times where you've gone too far, by mistake, of course, and then just said, oh, my gosh, and a big chagrin, now it ticked them off?
That's a great question, Paul.
That is a great question, Paul. First of all, when you're doing the research about the group, I always ask the question, is there anything sensitive I should know about that I should steer clear of? And, has there been anything that's happened recently that I should be aware of? Have any of the executives had something bad happen, a death in the family, an arrest, just something that I should be aware of? So I'm armed with that. I mean, that information, that's certainly helpful. The other thing, and now, again, I'm going to answer your question specifically, but a lot of that's in the prep, Paul, because if you prep for it, you minimize it happening. And when I'm writing lines about the client, I have a line, my own mantra is, when in doubt, leave it out. No matter how funny I think that line is, I go, oh, God, that would kill. That line will kill. But if I think, well, but wait a minute, you know what? I risk embarrassing the person by doing that line. Even though I've learned, let's say for argument's sake, in my research, I've learned that so-and-so talks a lot at meetings. They talk, and if you're going to their meeting, get ready because they're going to talk forever. So if I find out, if I'm the least bit worried that might upset the person, even though my line might be killer, when in doubt, leave it out. So, okay,
Gotcha.
But to Paul's question, what about if I don't leave it out? What about if I do a line that I thought was safe and then it didn't work? Now, I'm trying to think of an example. I have a great example. But it didn't help me because I blew the line. I don't know. Jane, have you ever had Chad Hymas on as a guest? I don't know if you have.
Not yet, but I do know who he is. I'm sure a lot of people do on the line.
Yeah, Chad Hymas is an incredible keynote speaker. He was injured in an accident maybe, 10 or 12 years ago. He was a farmer, and he had a several-ton bale of hay fall on him, and he became a paraplegic. He speaks from a wheelchair, and a great speaker. And he's got a great sense of humor. He does quite a bit of humor in his program. Well, Chad was on before I was, and Chad just did a great job. He really did. And in Chad's speaking style, when he's talking, he's very loose. He's very, very loose and casual, and he keeps going, hey, this, hey, and I thought, hey, and he uses the word hey quite a bit in his speaking style. So when I got up, I referenced back to Chad. I said how great he was. And now, again, he had told the story about the bale of hay falling on him. That's what caused his injury. I said, hey, you probably noticed Chad keeps saying, hey. Well, I guess he's flashing back to the accident. Now, of course, it was terrible. I in the moment, I thought the line was funny, and, of course, it wasn't. And, they didn't laugh, and I tried to apologize. I said, hey, Chad's a good friend of mine. We're both in National Speakers Association. He would find that funny, and of course, I had dug myself into a hole that was so deep that it took about 20 minutes before I think I started getting laughs again on a regular basis.
Wow.
Maybe it wasn't 20 minutes, but
that was pretty raw, David. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever told anyone that before. But Paul asked. Paul asked, and again, it was just bad judgment on my part. But I thought they would make the connection from the hay to the hay because he had said hay.
I understand.
So
you were hopeful. Let's go next. We've got a question from Doug. Did you have more you wanted to say on that, David?
No, not really. Just that. Thank you for helping me relive my nightmare. Thanks.
Sorry about that. Doug, you're up next. Hang on, I'm going to unmute you. Here you go. Let's check and see if we can hear you, Doug.
Hi, Jane. Hi, David. Hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for all of your lessons here. I have a question that might be appropriate for in my specific incident. Hopefully it will be for some others that might be listening as well. New speaker, new market, new subject. So everything brand new. I'd love to see first if my material in general works prior to putting any off-the-cuff kind of humor in there, or rehearsed spontaneity humor into my speech. would you be comfortable if, in the beginning, delivering it one or two or three or a half a dozen times unhumorous, just trying to figure out if my material works first, or do I get right into it and use my material to help springboard some of my speech?
Wow, that's a great question. That is a really great question. New material. Let me think on this. New material, first time out of the gate. Material, we're talking content. We're talking the content of your speech.
Right. Well, in my particular case, new speaker, so haven't had a chance to deliver a keynote yet, but it's also going to be new material to me and to my market. So I'm curious as to whether do I test it out first.
That's a great question. I might almost defer to Jane on that. I think you do need certainly some confidence up there with the content, but as long as you're trying everything out, I don't think, as long as the humor's done in small bits and pieces initially, because it's more important for the content to have a foundation, and the humor just fills in and makes you a better speaker.
Right.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with trying, make it a goal to have, 4 funny lines in that first time that you're doing it. But I think the foundation really needs to be the content first, and then as you get your legs with that, then you can start adding some more in. But I think to do zero humor initially is wrong. I think just 3, 4, 5 lines should be in there that first time out. I mean you owe it to your audience.
Sure, I think some of my humor would be reactionary humor anyway to my audience. It's a participatory speech, so people are going to be saying things, and there's always humor in their responses and my response to their responses. I just didn't know if you go into it with a couple of pre-planned, here's a line or two that I might be able to use during the speech.
Right. I would, because even the best ad-libbers and improvisers, on any given day, you could have an audience that just gives you nothing to work with. Even Don Rickles, who, is kind of old school, but if you're familiar with him, he's a comic who relies on, just whatever the audience is. He makes fun of the audience. But on any given day, his audience may not have the people, the fodder to give him that humor. So he has scripted stuff that fills in the gaps all the way along the entire time. No matter how good you are at, and like you said, you do some audience interaction with what your topic does, I would say yes, have a few planned lines, even for a brand new speaker doing brand new material, a few lines,
Great. Thanks, David. Thanks, Jane. Enjoying this.
Thank you. So that really makes me wonder whether or not the opening, I agree, like maybe just give it 2 or 3, or give it 3 or 4 little pieces that are planned. But how important, David, do you think that one of those land in the body of the opening story or somewhere kind of close to the front? Doesn't that just kind of relax the audience once they've heard you say something funny once?
It does. It gives them permission to laugh. I encourage your listeners, go to my speaking website, which is healthcarehumor.com. Look at my video. Look at the first 20 seconds of my video. You'll see there's laughter. I get hired more times from that first 20 seconds. People say, are you going to do that opening bit? Are you going to do that opening bit? Because it made them laugh. They related to it immediately. And yes, you're right, Jane, it does relax them. I know we only have a few minutes here, but let me just talk for 30 seconds at least about using humor in the marketing of your speaking too. Because that's crucial. Your video, and I think you'd agree with me on this, your video is probably the most important tool in your arsenal, short of being seen live. Being seen live, of course, that, you have to be amazing every time you step on stage. But your prospects don't have the luxury of seeing you live all the time. And your demo video, not only should it be masterfully produced, but it should have humor in there, even if you're not billing yourself as a humorist. Most speakers are not going to bill themselves as a humorist. So you should have some humor in there anyway. The humor's a bonus. It's a bonus. Wow, not only is he an expert on time management, but he's funny. Boy, not only is she an expert on team building, but she's hilarious. It's a bonus they weren't expecting. So the humor needs to be front and center, not just when you get on stage, like you were saying, Jane, in your opening, let the audience know from the get-go, this is going to be fun. Yeah, it's going to be serious. And yeah, we're talking about diversity today, or yes, we're talking about drug abuse today, or some very serious topic. But you know what? We're going to do it in a way that's not going to make everyone just sit on the edge of their chair and be uncomfortable. We can learn. We don't have to be uncomfortable to learn. We can still enjoy ourselves.
Nice. And I encourage people to put it at the front end of their video so that it changes the dynamic of the room. If it's 3 or 4 people watching your video, now you've made them laugh, and now they like you. So put it up at the front end. Load your humor on your video. Let's go really quick to introductions. Should you put something funny? Should you write something funny into your intro?
Yes and no. I do, but mine's really, really quick and fast. I say yes only if it's really easy for the introducer to read and they're not going to mess it up.
Okay, good.
That's the risk, That's the risk. But intros in general should be short. Mine's 4 sentences and I'm on stage. Boom, done.
Good.
Your speech, in my opinion, is what gives you the credibility, not all the accolades from before.
Okay, good. Now, we've got 3 minutes left, so let's give them the 2 websites again. The one to watch the video is called?
healthcarehumor.com. That's my
healthcarehumor.com. And they can go and they can watch your video. They're probably already watching it now. And let's talk about if someone says, oh, wow, I think I could use some help. Tell us a little bit about how that works and where they should go.
Again, the company I have for helping people with humor is called funnierspeeches.com. Funnier, Funnier, funnierspeeches.com. Myself and Ron Culberson, we will take a transcript or a script of your speech, and we'll look at it. There's samples on our website. So we show you how the whole process works right on the website. Our pricing is right on the website. And we take your script and we add humor to it. Some of it you'll like, some of it you won't like, and that's okay. We give you way, way more than you'd probably ever want to use because humor is really, really subjective. What I find funny, Jane, you may not find funny. What you find funny, I may not funny. So we throw a boatload of humor at the speaker, and then he or she picks the ones they think are funny. And they're welcome to use all of it, but more times than not, they're only going to pick some. But they own all of it. Once we write it for you, you own it. So, you can use as much or as little as you want.
Well, that sounds like a heck of a deal.
It's all done on the internet. I'm sorry.
Great. And you couldn't be working with 2 nicer guys. I know Ron and David very, very well, and they're just both great, great people, human beings. Well, listen, David, I want to say thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Wealthy Speaker Show. Please visit speakerlauncher.com for your free Wealthy Speaker audit and visit speakerlauncher.com/podcast for show notes and many more resources to help you catapult your speaking business. See you soon, Wealthy Speakers.